Hey, what's going on? It is your Thursday episode of Locked On Raptors. Sean Woodley here with you as always. And on today's show, we are joined by a very special guest. It's Amy Audibert, who, of course, you know from doing sideline reporting with the Toronto Raptors broadcast for Sportsnet this year before pivoting into doing color analysis as well next to Matt Devlin. It's been a wild and wacky season for the Raptors broadcast, and I'm excited to talk to Amy about the changes in role and how difficult that is and how she got to be so freaking good at her job. Plus, we're going to take a look at the Raptors road trip that lies ahead. It should be a very interesting test for the team with some tough teams on the slate. Is that the word? Yeah. We're going to dig into that and sort of pick out some things that we're keeping our eye on as the road trip comes up beginning tomorrow in Detroit. That's all coming up on today's episode of Locked On Raptors. Thanks for being here.
You are Locked On Raptors, your daily Toronto Raptors podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, what's going on? Welcome to episode number 1096 of Locked On Raptors for Thursday, January the 13th. I'm your host, Sean Woodley of RaptorsHQ.com. You can find me on Twitter, as always, at WoodleySean. And you can find the show at Locked On Raptors, as always, as well. And you can subscribe to, follow, rate, review, all that good stuff. Do anything you can to support the podcast for free on your favorite podcast apps. It's much appreciated when you do that. Plus, if you go to YouTube and find Locked On Raptors, you can hit the big red subscribe button there, too. And it's very, very kind of you to do that. We're at like 1,450 subs now. So please keep on adding to those numbers. It's very, very cool to see all the new faces and friends and just people hanging out in the comments. It's a very, very nice place to be. So with that, let's get to today's show. Of course, your first listen of the day. And joining me on today's episode, I'm very happy. Someone I've podcasted with a ton about the Canadian Elite Basketball League and also a little bit about the Raptors. Of course, it is Amy Audibert from Sportsnet, working the sidelines, working the color analysis chair. How's it going, Amy?
It's great. I'm so happy to be here with you, Sean. Yeah, like it's.
Oh, that's so kind. I love it when people are just happy to slum it with me. It's the best.
Listen, this is some production value here. So, I mean, I am in a new space with you and just loving this first 2 minutes and 34 seconds.
Yeah, behind the curtain, Amy and I are co-hosts on the CEBL show podcast, where we talk about the Canadian Elite Basketball League, which of course has been in the news this year with a bunch of their guys getting NBA deals through all the hardships and everything. But usually for those episodes, we recorded those in the summer before I got this whole setup, and it was a lot of on my laptop camera with my laptop boosted up on a board game with like a very fuzzy camera in my dining room. So this is a far better state of affairs than it used to be, Amy.
It's great. You look great. You sound great. That's still the same. So good job.
Oh, well, that's wrong but kind. Let's dig into this, Amy. We're going to talk a little bit about the Raptors and where things are headed. I want to talk to you about the road trip that's coming up and some things you might have your eye on for this team as they kind of go into a very interesting stretch when it comes to testing themselves, right? We'll get into that. I also want to talk to you about the sort of morass of dudes in the second unit and maybe, who is emerging from that, who is maybe losing their standing, and we'll kind of dig into that as well. But first, I want to talk to you about your own season, Amy. It's been wild for you. You were doing sidelines and then COVID happens and it's a nightmare and everything is thrown for a loop. And all of a sudden you're doing color on the sidelines. Obviously a role you've occupied before. Raptors 905 games, WNBA games for the Atlanta Dream. So not like it's a position you're unfamiliar with, but like you're calling games for the Raptors now. It's got to be pretty cool. Like what's this sort of like whirlwind you've been on over the last couple of months as your role has gone up and down and changed and has put you in this position where, you're calling games on the sidelines. You're calling games from a studio with Matt Devlin in the dome. Like it's got to be a pretty wild couple months for you, Amy.
Absolutely, it has been. I mean, and it's not, in some way, it's always it's an unfortunate circumstance that we're back with living in these times right now. But I guess, especially in live television, it doesn't matter if it's sports or whatever. I mean, the number one thing is you have to be prepared for anything.
Mm-hmm.
And when I first jumped into television, probably about 8 or 10 years now, that was like the most important thing for me. Is I just didn't want to have one role that I could do.
Mm-hmm.
And
Sure.
especially, I always wanted to work in the NBA. That was always kind of like, for me, like the goal. And there are 30 NBA teams. So for me, I was like, I want to get to the point where I can apply for not 30 jobs, that I can apply for 60 or 90, like
Mhm, mhm.
and so I've been fortunate in the last 2 months to do a couple different things. And but that was for me, it was really intentional again to be able to, and I mean it took a lot of time and an effort. It's not like I'm there, like I'm still trying to evolve and get better and figure out, how to better serve the fan base and the network and the team and all these things. But I've certainly put a lot of time in both positions. So I, just wake up and all right, what am I doing today? Let's get it done.
Yeah. So, like, I know the way you approach your job. Like, you are so for everyone who doesn't know. Like, we were doing the CEBL bubble. It was like a 6 game series of games back in 2020. God, years are fake, time is fake. Who knows?
Yeah,
But
it's like
uh,
technically, 2 centuries
so
ago back in 2020.
yeah, yeah. So like Javon Shepherd and I were doing the play-by-play for those games, and you were doing sideline when we were working. And like Javon and I, like we do our prep, we have our stuff on hand, we know what we're talking about. But then you come in, Amy, with just like binders and binders of notes on all these guys. You're just really, really well prepared, and that's why you're so damn good at your job. But I have to ask you, like, what is the difference in the prep sort of process for a sideline game and a color game? Because like those are two very different things.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, for sideline, I'm always trying to, and I mean, my role with Sportsnet is a sideline analyst, so it's also
Right.
kind of a new territory that, I'm really fortunate and so happy that they kind of try to do this hybrid position, and I'm
Hmm.
still navigating that, and we all kind of are because I think there's maybe Holly Rowe does it for the Jazz, like, there's not too many
Right.
NBA, hybrid roles, but, for sideline, it's obviously the news, if something's breaking with the team. I also take that as the opportunity to really dig into some of the things that the men and women of the Toronto Raptors, are doing, things that they're passionate about, and be ready for that. I had a system that I thought was going to work. It absolutely does not work. I have a giant binder. Every team, every player on the team has like this, like basically chapter in my binder. And every time I have a story or hit on them, it gets filed. And I'm like, this can be great. The binder's huge. We never have any space. It's so heavy. It doesn't travel with me. But that was the idea. With
Just you're
color,
not paying for the checked binder. You're like it's just not worth it for
it's
you.
just really heavy. I mean, but I mean, I'm glad. I guess I do have like a reference, like something to reference to when I get home.
Hmm. Hmm.
And with the analyst stuff, obviously, it's a more on the trends, the basketball, different sitting, working beside the great Maddie D.
Hmm.
But I also would say where I think I separate or where I make myself a little bit different, which you can
Hmm.
like or you cannot like, is I think it's still important to incorporate some of those human interest stories into
Yeah.
the element of calling a broadcast. Like, I want to know when Justin Champagnie starts hitting corner threes. Like, I want to know something about him so I can break down why he's open, why his shot looks so good, the timing of it. I can do that in a 10-second replay. But then
Hmm.
when the shot comes back of Justin, I think it's important to talk about him. And I've got to know something about him. And I think that's really important. And again, it's a lot of time, a lot of effort. And sometimes it works great and sometimes it doesn't, and still figure it all out. But it's, yeah, I mean, that's here I am over talking, but that's the long winded version.
Oh, over talking, it's the dream for a podcast host. Oh, more time has been filled. Oh, great, fantastic. No, I mean, I think you've been doing such a great job on the call, Amy. And I'm not just saying that because, like, I know you and we work together. Like, I legitimately learn things when, and I watch a lot of basketball. And sometimes I might zone out and feel like, oh, the color analyst's not really teaching me much. They're just kind of having a good time, which is fine too. Like, I think all color analysts kind of do their thing in their own way. There's not one right way to do it, but like I really feel like you have like a knack for kind of diagnosing things, explaining why things are happening in like very plain English for dummies like me. And I think that's like a really cool thing. Like, is that something that you feel is like a natural thing for you? Obviously, you played at a high level in college, like you have all the lingo and everything down. Like, that's not a problem for you. But in terms of like translating it for the lay people out there, how do you find that challenge and sort of tackling that?
Well, thank you so much, first of all. Yeah, I mean, I think, it's usually an analyst is a former player or someone who's been watching or, just knows the game, and sometimes it's easy to be like, and especially in television, um, there's always that fine line between like over talking and not talking enough and all that
Mhm.
stuff. And it's like with TV, you can kind of hide that a bit because everyone at home's watching it. But
Yeah.
sometimes it's important to just simplify. Like sometimes, and I know like coaches do it, players do it. And I mean, I did it as a coach, I did it as a player, so it's not a cut against them. And even as an analyst, like we have the tendency to overthink the game, and
Mhm.
sometimes it's not that complicated, right? And so that's like why the first thing I always just kind of watch the game for like as what's happening. And I mean, yes, we can dig into like the coverage on the screen and the little intricacies of an offense or defense, but sometimes it's just like, man, they're just not in a stance,
Yeah.
or and that's clearly the opposition, not the
Mhm.
Raptors, you know. But I mean, or it's the other thing. It's so awesome. It's like that was just, that was he just ran and filled the lane correctly. Yes, you can see it on
Mhm.
TV. Yes, everyone knows it, but sometimes it's nice just to continue to like add color. That's literally the
Sure.
title of the job, is to add color to what's happening, and it can be a lot of fun at times.
Well, yeah, it's a blast watching you, Amy, and I really, really am excited that you're in the rotation now of color analysts for the Raptors, because that's a good thing for everybody involved. Amy, we're going to continue on. And we're actually going to talk about the Raptors and dig into the road trip that's coming up, the sort of battle for minutes in the back part of the rotation, and more. That's coming up in just 1 second here. But first, I want to tell everybody about our friends over at PrizePicks, which has made daily fantasy easier than anybody else. PrizePicks has the very best NBA DFS prop game on the market. PrizePicks offers more NBA props than any other DFS prop operator and offers all the superstar players as well as bench players only recording a handful of minutes each game. PrizePicks offers any prop you can think of, from points, assists, rebounds, threes made, steals, whatever it is, it's there. You pick 2 to 5 players, you get an over under on their projections, and you can win up to 10 times on any entry. It's just you versus the projected numbers as well. That's the best part. A lot of these other sites you go to and you're up against some sort of expert, you're up against a million different experts who have these shadow lineups that you have no idea what you're competing with. This is just, hey, here are the projections. Can you beat them? Go ahead. That's great. If you do, you win some money. That is perfect. PrizePicks also allows mixed sport entries. So you can take the over on Joel Embiid and take the under on Aaron Rodgers getting the vaccine in the same entry. You can use the award-winning app on both the App Store and Google Play as well. PrizePicks is safe and it offers fast withdrawals too. And it's a really, really wonderful place. They have figured out daily fantasy in a way nobody else has. Go to prizepicks.com today or go to your app store and download the app. All users that deposit and use the promo code NBA will get $50 free if your first PrizePicks entry scores a single point. That's right. You need a single point. Oh, boom. You get that $50 free bonus in your account. That's right. Go check it out with the promo code NBA at prizepicks.com. PrizePicks is daily fantasy made easy. And we continue on here with your first listen of the day on Locked On Raptors with Amy Audibert of Sportsnet and, the world, taking over the world. How about that? The Toronto Raptors, Amy, have a road trip coming up. It's not an easy one. They take on the Pistons on Friday. Obviously, the Pistons are not very good at all, but Cade Cunningham's fun. They beat the Jazz earlier this week, and you got the Dwayne Casey, Nick Nurse blood feud that always kind of adds a little bit of juice to the affair. You got the Milwaukee Bucks coming up on Saturday. Hopefully, the Raptors get to play Giannis. That's a weird thing to say because you want to see the Raptors win, but Giannis is awesome, and it would be a cool test for the Raptors to play the fully healthy Bucks for the first time this season. Then on Monday, it's Kyle Lowry's Miami Heat. Next Wednesday, it is the Luka Doncic-led Dallas Mavericks, who are playing really good basketball right now. And then they close out the road trip against Kyle Kuzma's Washington Wizards on Friday. It's a loaded schedule, 5 games in 8 days. Amy, are you dreading the travel on this one? I guess you're not traveling right now because of the world, but
Yeah,
more so,
a lot of
like,
basketball, and I
there's a
never.
lot of basketball, and it's a lot of good teams, which the Raptors have not played a ton of lately, because teams have not had their players, and that's been just the way it is, and there's nothing you can really do about it, and you got to beat who's in front of you or play who's in front of you. But, we saw the game against the Suns earlier this week, Amy. There were a lot of promising signs there, even though they lost. The Suns are awesome. You lose to the Suns, that's what happens. But with the next 5 games here on the road, they've been like basically at home for the entirety of the last month or so, like a couple of road games sort of sprinkled into a very home dominated schedule. What are you looking for on this road trip in terms of like the things that you're really watching to see if, okay, let's see if these things can continue on from the homestand and see if the success can kind of carry through these 5 games. What you got your eye on?
Well, first of all, I'm wondering if the Raptors passport's updated because he's clearly the key moving forward.
He needs fans to like, yeah, just like let him go and bother the people of Detroit, please.
I just can't stop thinking about this. Listen, you mentioned 5 games, 4 of those are against Eastern opponents, and I think
Hmm.
that that's a huge deal, right? When we look at how close the Eastern standings are, a lot of these games could be pretty important moving forward. Uh,
Hmm.
the Phoenix loss, I don't think too many people love moral victories. I'm not one of them, but the reality is, without 2 starters, they had one of the best teams in the NBA who is healthy on their heels.
Hmm.
And I think that that means something for this Raptors team, who again is just, as we say, 2 bodies, 2 starters missing in Scotty and Gary, are still like just getting healthy, just getting together
Hmm.
for the first time this season. And so I think getting them back and hopefully getting them back anyways at some point is going to be big.
Hmm.
But yeah, they're tests. Every game's a test. Every single one, and don't forget, Detroit beat Toronto at home, right? Like
Yeah.
earlier this season, so it's not like that's going to be a cakewalk for Dwayne. Yeah, Dwayne Creasy's always kind of got the number here, so it's going to be that's a first big test, and that's a Friday night game, and I think it's one at a time, but just the opportunity to win some, especially against Eastern opponents here, is a huge deal. And also, I would say being on the road, they are going to be back in gyms that are packed.
Yeah.
It is a different vibe, and our last trip was actually that giant trip in November,
Right.
and it was kind of funny because by the end of it, everyone's like thinking, "Oh, December is gonna be at least not." I'm not saying the players or anyone that I'm talking about the broadcast. We were like, "Yeah, December's 3 trips. They're one-offs." It was like Chicago, Cleveland, like supposed to be anyways. So it was like, "We're gonna be home. It's gonna be great." And I think you get to the point, and you're getting excited to go back on the road a little bit, play in the
Hmm.
hostility. I used to love playing on the road. The hostility of the crowds. I mean, come on. And I
Yeah.
think there's a little bit of that too. So there's a lot of good things to look forward to right now for the Raptors.
Yeah, that's an interesting point you make because that has been something that has come up in the past. Like at the end of a long road trip, I think Kyle Lowry talked about that a lot, like more than once during his time with the team. Like at the end of a long road trip, it's like, yeah, you know what, we're ready to kind of get back out there and sort of like hang out with the guys and do the road trip thing. Obviously, it's a little bit of a different situation than it normally would be, but I think maybe it's even more of a hey, let's get the hell out of here because we can go play with fans type of thing. Like you've been in the building, Amy. You've kind of experienced this fanless experience. Like, is it going to be like a shock to go play 5 games in a row without fans? Like, do you think it's just kind of normalized at this point? Like, how much has, I mean, obviously it hasn't had a crazy impact on the winning because they won all those games basically, except for the Suns one where they didn't have fans in the building. So, like, maybe it doesn't really matter all that much, but like, do you think there will be a tangible change, sort of an adjustment for these guys as they go and play in gyms where it's not just sort of this cavernous hall where just the Raptors skulking around as the only person in the building?
I don't think I think these guys have proven that they have the ability to do that, right? And I mean, when
Yeah.
you look at the bubble, and then you looked at the Tampa experience last year, for them, it's kind of like, yeah, like they know where it's at, Like, sorry. And again, I think that playing in packed gyms, regardless of if you're the home or visitor team, there's something very fun about that. And I just also want to say, I'm not. I understand why the decision's been made up here. This is
Mhm.
serious, and I think the hope is to make sure we can get back quicker than sooner.
Totally. Totally.
So and then that's the thing. Like I know everyone's it's definitely like a heated debate. Certainly want to get fans back in Scotiabank Arena.
Mhm.
But yeah, I don't think that for the guys, I don't think it's a huge. I mean, it is an adjustment, but for them, they're professionals and they continue to show that all the time. This is not the first time they've dealt with it. And if there's out of the 30 teams in the NBA, the one that understands what this kind of complete contrast is, it is the Toronto Raptors.
That's a very, very good point. In terms of things going forward here in the road trip, Amy, like something I want to sort of zero in on is the defense because it's been this sort of weird thing where it started off really rough to start the season, and I think most of the struggles have been sort of attributed mostly to just a lack of chemistry, a lack of reps with one another. It's still a very sort of new group of guys. They've played 10 games together as their sort of like full selves, if that. The defense looked really good against the Suns. It was why they were able to hang in that game, because their offense was certainly not why they were able to hang in that game on Tuesday. And, they've had their moments. Obviously, there have been other games like the Jazz game in the first half and the Bucks game where the defense totally just forgets how to play for a half at a time. As this road trip goes forward here, I'm curious, what do you think the true Raptors defense is? Do you think it's this sort of middling, closer to the bottom half than it is the top half type of defense? Do you think it has the capability to climb back up into the top half, flirt with top 10? We've talked about this a little bit this week, but I think trying to decipher what the defense is going to be sort of the biggest thing to tell whether this team is able to go on a run and be the 6th seed, because the offense, as promising as things have been, and as much as it keeps on hanging near the top 10, totally inexplicably, considering some of their profile, the defense is going to be what powers this team, I would think. That was what we thought before the season, and that's what I think is still true. But do they have enough runway here, do you think, to get to that level where they're on a string like they were against the Suns for more than just a game or a half at a time?
Yeah, well, that's the beauty of the Raptors defense, right? Is I think that
Hmm.
there's a little bit of it that is predicated on just a lot of swarming and confusion and what is going on. But
Hmm.
it's interesting when I was involved with a team that was the style we wanted to play, and no one could figure out, as long as the people on the court and in the locker room know what you're trying to do, then it doesn't matter what anyone else knows, right? And sometimes those are the best defenses that look a little bit like, again, what's happening right now. But
Yeah.
it really, I think they all understand, their length is the most overwhelming thing.
Hmm.
They're gonna they'll run into problems when you have a 300-pound 7-footer that gets 2 feet from the basket, and it's happened once in a while. But that's when, if you see them, you got to jump out and play in the passing lanes, the communication, and the ball pressure. But like you said, we saw it against Phoenix, so I don't think it's unrealistic to expect that, right? And that's where they want to
Hmm.
be. And then you said it's just making it more consistent, and to the point of them actually having a nice offensive rating or being up there. It is off their defense for the most part. And this
Yeah.
is Fred VanVleet and Pascal right now. They're playing some very good basketball. But yeah, I mean, it's a team that's, again, their strength is going to be their ability to defend, to create chaos and havoc. I remember in the Milwaukee game, they jumped out and set a trap or two late that got picked off. That's, again, 5 guys on a string, like you said, right? But it's just these little surprise kind of little efforts, and it requires chemistry. I say it all the time. When teams talk about having chemistry, new bodies, bringing someone back that's been injured, you think of chemistry and you literally think of that means on the offensive end.
Hmm.
But, I mean, there's same thing can be said on the defensive end. Understanding who you're out there with, how they defend, how they close out. If a certain guy gets beat, as a teammate, if he can recover because you've played with him multiple times, right? So maybe your
Hmm.
help isn't as strong, or maybe you're not digging down as much. All those things are just reps and playing together. So while we talk about that offensively, I think it's very fair to also say the defensive chemistry, but it's continuing to start to really push forward, and now it's just consistency.
I have to ask you, Amy. You were a center in your days at Miami. How would you have held up in Nick Nurse's insane, everybody's running all over the place defense?
Absolutely not. God, I was the 2-1-2 of a zone. I was the best one. If anyone, my rules, if you come into the paint, I get to go hit you.
Uh
That was,
huh. Uh huh.
I mean, I was an elite communicator. I would say that. That was my thing. I was a great communicator. And if you came into the paint, I'd completely hit you. But if you asked me to switch out on a guard on a ball screen, above the 3-point line, all right. But just so you know, everyone else is out of rotation. We had a 5-4 for me. Our 5-5 was switch all. Our 5-4 was everyone switches except the center. I
Amy,
would
we're gonna
jam
finish.
screens. I would jam the heck out of screens. I would take fouls if I could,
Uh huh.
jamming screens. It was a messy, messy game.
Amy, we're going to continue on and round out the show. I want to talk about the sort of battle for bench minutes right now, and guys who are playing, guys who aren't playing, and maybe we see some sort of, I don't know, clarity as to what the rotation is going to be in the second unit going forward as this road trip ramps up. We'll get to that in just 1 second here, Amy. But first, want to tell the people out there about BetOnline. BetOnline would like to wish you a happy new betting year as they continue their march towards the playoffs and beyond in football, basketball, hockey, all of the sports. BetOnline remains your #1 spot for all the best sports wagering action for 2022. It's a new year, and you've got a new updated desktop or mobile website to check out and sign up at today. go receive your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit as well by using the promo code LOCKEDON, all one word, LOCKEDON. That means if you put in $100, you get 50% of that added to your account as well. So you got $150 to play with. That is a great, great deal from football, basketball, hockey, boxing, UFC, right to your favorite Vegas casino games. Don't wait and take advantage of all the amazing offers for 2022. Maybe you want to put some money down on your Toronto Raptors, for example. They're winning some games. They're covering spreads. Maybe go check them out and check out what the lines are today over at BetOnline, which is the fastest and easiest way to wager on all your favorite sports. BetOnline is where the game starts. And we round out your first listen of the day here with Amy Audibert from Sportsnet, hanging out, previewing the Raptors road trip. And I think one thing, Amy, that I'm really curious to see is whether this road trip helps to get a little bit of clarity as to what the second unit is going to look like night to night. Lately, they've been going with this everyone off the bench is a big and we'll figure it out. And Pascal Siakam and Scotty Barnes are the backup point guards, which I feel like there's this sort of like underlying desire from Raptors fans to just like, oh, you got to go get a backup point guard. You got to go get one. I'm perfectly fine with Scotty Barnes and Pascal Siakam doing what they're doing. It's working pretty well if you haven't paid attention. Like it's a pretty good thing, but that obviously, it creates some strange dynamics with the lineups, and Nick Nurse is trying some weird stuff. They're playing all 6'8", 6'9" dudes at times, and it's been a little bizarre, but it's been fun and it's working in a lot of ways. But Amy, we're seeing Justin Champagnie really make a push for regular minutes. Just constantly, whenever he hits the floor, there's an offensive rebound falling into his grasp. You've got Chris Boucher, who at one point this season, I would have said, hey, maybe he's not really deserving of rotation minutes. He's absolutely deserving of rotation minutes. He's probably deserving of being the first guy off the bench for the Raptors and is going to close a lot of games right now, especially if Scotty Barnes is going to be out. Like that, he's been excellent, and there's no two ways about it. And if he's going to play like this, he's in. Ken Birch, obviously, we know is in as well. But then you've got Yuta Watanabe, struggled a little bit lately. Svi Mihailuk struggled a lot bit lately. Malachi Flynn not playing at all. And, where is he? Is he part of the plans? Who's to say? But as far as that sort of back end of the rotation, Amy, you got Precious Achua in there as well. There's lots of guys who are vying for minutes who do different things. Is there someone who you think is not receiving regular time right now, who's maybe been more of a bit part, who deserves to be in there all the time? And is that Justin Champagnie?
Well, I wouldn't say like that deserves to be in there all the time. I think
Sure.
Justin's starting to do a good job, and it's not going to be go out there and play like 40 minutes.
Yeah.
So I think they did on it because the thing with Justin, by the way, I think he's awesome. He's
Yeah.
a cool guy. I mean, just totally like embracing every single step. But that's the brilliance of the way they've handled him, is that it's been like a little progression at a time. If you're
Mhm.
noticing his first couple minutes when he would get in earlier, it was like, go grab some rebounds, and then he went over to the 905 and dropped 30 or 34. And then
Mhm.
2 days later, he had that tap in that was an almost buzzer. And so it's kind of like they've never thrown him in situations where it's like, go win us a ball game or go. And now he's at the point where he can get in there and he hits a couple shots, and he defends and he roams around the rim really nice. And it's awesome when like Pascal like trusts the undrafted rookie like to hit a big
Yeah.
bucket. Like, and we're seeing all that stuff. So he's earning more trust and it's coming. So I mean, yeah, I think Delano's gonna, he's been a bit up and down lately, but he came out of protocols. It was a knee, right? That he had.
Yeah. Something like that. Yeah.
So I mean, again, like it's not like people are being like completely sent to the side for no reason at all.
Mhm.
While I understand you want a consistent rotation, how boring are you? I'm just kidding. No, but I would say this like
How Dwayne Casey of me to want the
no.
same 9 guys every night. Yeah.
I would say, imagine, so as a fan, as an analyst, like we try to kind of get a grasp of where things are maybe going, just for us to feel like
Mhm.
some kind of can you imagine playing in the last like month? You've got guys who at the beginning of the year, like Svi's a perfect example where he hasn't been shooting well. He hasn't been playing well the last week or so, a couple weeks probably. But I would say it, his role has been, and it's no one's fault, but he goes from like, okay, come off the bench. Now you're going to start. Now you're going to play big minutes. Now you're not going to play at all. And that, like, so
Mhm.
just like finding balance. So when you check into a game, so I think like a guy like that, he should continue to get his opportunities. He's not just a shooter. He can do really nice things in the open court.
Hmm.
Um, so I mean, I think it's just again, this road trip's going to be a huge opportunity. It's going to be really interesting to see with Scotty and Gary because that's going to create or maybe limit more opportunities. But
Hmm.
the other, I think, in terms of importance, I think Utah off the bench is like what he does.
Yeah.
That's what the bench mob is.
Yeah.
Ridiculous energy, get the crowd like going nuts, creating opportunities. I think Precious can be that. I
Hmm.
really do. I think Precious can be that, and you're seeing him really kind of I don't wanna say, like, the game's slowing down for him but you're seeing him kinda, like, take that extra power dribble every once in a while now and, like, finishing super strong and going in there and grabbing rebounds, and, I mean, Chris has been on a tear, so,
Hmm.
I think it's just also just a matter of just finding for them to find some consistency in their roles.
Yeah, and I mean, it might just be the situation where there is no sort of regular stasis in the back part of the rotation, right? And it's, hey, the matchup calls for this night. This guy's not looking so hot. This guy goes in. I just think Justin Champagnie should play more. I love Justin Champagnie. I love how he just knows where to be at all times. And I have to ask you, Amy, like, he's so good at offensive rebounding and just knowing where the ball is. So I'm going to ask you to draw on your post play experience in the past. Like, how does one get so good at knowing where the ball is going to land? Like, is there like, are you doing drills on like learning angles? Do you have a protractor kit where you're doing geometry lessons like in your downtime and film sessions? Like, is that just like a natural sort of I guess everyone would do it if it were easy. Like, what goes into being that good an offensive rebounder? Because it seems extremely difficult.
Yeah, I mean, he's got immaculate timing on
Hmm.
his jump, right? Like, that's part of it, and really good rebounders, they see the rim, they see the shot, and then they can also see the bodies, right?
Right.
And so I think and part of with him too is he just moves without the ball in his hands so well that he
Hmm.
finds himself in good positions. I think it's a combination of anything but everything, but then let's like we're talking about his physical ability to get up and to time and to leap, but then there's just like the shoulders up, right? I think
Right.
that he's been so good, and it's interesting. I think he recently said too, like that was he did that in college, like in college, like he was a rebounder, like that's what he did, and he was a hustle guy.
Hmm.
So eh, huge kudos to him for again getting this opportunity in the NBA coming right out of college and not trying to like push it to the point where like and I don't want to say play outside himself like he's not capable. He's got a very high
Sure.
ceiling, but it was like, hey, this is what got me here, and I'm just going to continue to do this. So I mean, listen, and also like if you're guarding a Jokic, like you're not checking Champagnie, right?
Yeah.
So like,
Yeah.
that's just the reality of it. Like if you're a big around the rim, you're probably getting your own guy. So he's been doing a great job, and especially against zone defenses. Again, like he's so great around the baseline and making those little cuts, and he's often finding gaps. So when the shot goes
Hmm.
up and there's no bodies around, he's got the hops to go get it.
Yeah, he's kind of like a little apparition that just floats through box outs. It's like, oh, your box. Yeah, sorry, I'm a ghost. Ball's mine. Bye. It's really fun to watch. I think I just like I really love a dude who exudes the energy that I wish to exude as a 45-year-old man playing pickup one day. Where it's like I'm doing all the smart plays. I'm setting hard screens. I'm grabbing rebounds over like children. That really is like the future I want.
And
And
then you're
Justin
spending
Champagnie
half
is
your
playing
paycheck
like I want to be. What was
and
that?
then you're spending half your paycheck on bags of ice. And it just
Yeah.
ain't worth it, Sean, or
Oh,
Shaq,
no, no.
you
It
know?
is worth it for the glory of destroying teens at the Y. Totally worth it. Yeah, I love it. He's for me the new guy who like, I think this has been like a parlor game that I've played before on the show. It's like, oh, like which Raptor most embodies your game at the Y or pickup? And it used to be Luis Scola for me, like slow, gonna settle for jumpers a lot, but man, I'm a good teammate. And now it's Champagne has become my new sort of bar to shoot for.
You want mine?
Amy,
Do
I
you
don't
want
want to
mine?
take. Sorry, go
Do
ahead.
you want mine? Do you want mine? Who I
Yes, please. Yes, absolutely.
I'm JYD, man. Like, put me
Yes.
in. I'm gonna pump everybody up. I'm gonna have the best time. I'm gonna wear high socks. Like, that's me. I just love it.
Do you bark at all? Have you ever
Oh,
barked at a person?
absolutely. Absolutely.
I one time called JYD. I was producing a radio show and we had JYD on the show. I one time called him and he barked at me.
Oh,
Just like,
come on.
hey, JYD, it's Sean. Arr.
Oh,
Hey, Sean,
that's
how's it
amazing.
going?
Was it like breakfast? Was it like 6 a.m. radio when you were pumped for the day? Like,
No, it was like a Saturday afternoon, and he's just barking. Yeah, no, he's the best.
awesome.
Love JYD. Very
Yeah.
glad that that's your. Honestly, I think Justin Champagnie embodies. We were like, oh, Damari Carroll, JYD 2.0. Never made a lick of sense. Champagnie might actually have a case. Again, he has to learn to bark though. Amy, this was so fun. Thank you so much for hanging out. Hope we can do it again sometime. Hope you have a good time calling all these games on the road trip and just doing your thing because you're kicking ass and you're really, really good at your job. People know where to find you, but if there's anything that people should know about, when stuff that you got going on, things you care about, a movie you liked, I don't know, go ahead and plug.
Thank God, I'm just all about hoops right now. I got the new season of Dexter was just had a heated debate about this last night.
Mm.
If you're into Dexter, like we can chat about that too.
I
But
have never watched Dexter. I never got into it. There's a sad reason why, but I won't bore you with that on the podcast. But we can get sad off air, Amy. We'll have a little therapy sesh. But no, if I'm plugging something, go watch The Righteous Gemstones. I'm watching that back. It's so good. It's fantastic. That's my plug. Also, my plug is follow me on Twitter at Woodley Sean. Follow Amy at Amy Audibert. The Twitter handle's right there on the YouTube if you're watching. You can subscribe to the podcast wherever you get your podcast. It's very much appreciated. It's a wonderful thing to do. Helps me out, strokes my ego, all that good stuff. And we're on YouTube as well for free. So please go subscribe there too. And thanks for making us your first listen of the day. Now make your second listen of the day Locked On Bets, as your boy Q and Lee Sterling from Paramount Sports are cutting through all the noise in the COVID-ridden sports landscape right now, winning you some money with their betting picks every night. So go and check out Locked On Bets. And with that, we will wrap it up. We'll be back again tomorrow to round out the week with Katie Heindel. Until then, bye-bye.